Good morning, everybody. Hope you had an excellent weekend, and glad to have you back here this week as we continue in the book of Proverbs, chapter 7. If you want to follow along, we'll be in verses 24 and 25 today. And we have been looking at the story uh, that the father tells his son, illustrating the danger of immorality, and warning him about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, the trap of temptation. And now we've finished the story, and now the father says to the young man, "Hearken unto me now. Hearken unto me now, therefore," he says. Therefore, based on the story I just told you, hearken unto me now, therefore, O you children, and attend to the words of my mouth. Let not thy heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths. And so the conclusion of the story is that it has taught, hopefully taught the young man and you and I a very important lesson. Primarily, as we have talked about through this section, primarily about the danger of immorality, the danger, the deadly, terrible nature of immorality, and that we have to be very careful and guard ourselves, that we don't put ourselves in a place of temptation, that we don't allow ourselves to be there. But then that lesson, again, I believe is even broader. We apply that lesson to sin in general, uh, that we that we protect ourselves, we guard ourselves, and don't allow ourselves to be in places where sin is easy. And we all, I hope, understand that there are places where sin is easier than others. Just to use two radical examples, if you're sitting on a church pew on Sunday morning, you're probably less likely to get caught up in a brawl or even immorality than you would be if you were in a bar room on Saturday night. Some places sin just seems easier for us to fall into, and so this story reminds us of that danger. And he addresses here as he speaks. He says, "Hearken to me, O you children," and so he is going even further along, and not just to this son, to this child, but future children, future generations. And so he pleads with them that they would hearken or listen, as the word that he uses, and he wants them to understand it, and he's pleading with them. I think all of us recognize that when we were younger, many times when those in our life who were more experienced, been through more battles, older people would speak to us and try to give us this type of wisdom, we would shrug it off. We now reap what we sow as parents and grandparents, that when we try to tell our children, our grandchildren, about some of the dangers that they might face, they think we're out of style, we're had lost touch with reality, and they're able to fend for themselves. But Solomon wants his children, his descendants. He's begging them to listen to his words. And again, primarily his warning is to avoid sexual sin, to avoid being drawn in to the net. Don't turn your heart, don't put yourself in that position. And again, I think that lesson is broader and can be applied even broader than just sexual sin. That we, again, some places, as I said before, some places it seems it's just easier to get caught up in sin. And with some people, sometimes the crowd we're with puts us in a dangerous way. Go not astray in her paths, he says in verse 25. And sometimes the path we're on just leads us a into a situation where we are easily captivated, where we're easily trapped. And the important thing, I think, again, when we look at this story, is when we look at this, again, it could have been prevented. This young man, at any point, he could have kept walking. When the lady came out of the house, he could have ran. At any point in this story, until the very end, he could have avoided this sin. And that is the case in most cases, that we can avoid the sin. Another thing we notice earlier in the story, he was with a group of his supposed friends. Again, I said sometimes the place we are makes it easier for us to fall into sin. Sometimes the people we're with makes it easier to fall in sin. He intentionally went to the neighborhood where this woman lived. He hung around that neighborhood. Again, he just put himself repeatedly in that situation, making himself vulnerable to her trap. And at any point, at any time, he could have left that situation, but he stayed, and that's how sin works. We just play with it, we hang around it, we dabble with it until we are trapped. At any point, we could get out of it, but we just continue to stay, continue to tempt. We're tempting temptation almost. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but what we learn from this story, I think, is we don't have to be there. We can get ourselves out of that situation and run from that situation that might draw us in. And every one of us knows our weakness. You know what is most likely to trip you up? We all know the temptation that most likely will draw us in, and we need to do everything in our power to avoid that, to protect ourselves and to keep ourselves pure in the sight of God. You think about that today. Think about that tomorrow too, and have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.